Pokemon Horizons doesn't work for me, and I promise I gave it a fair shot. I started watching it a little bit last year, lost motivation to keep up, and then started watching it again and got right up to around episode 35 or so. I was really enjoying the series, and I can see myself watching it in the future, but it really boils down to a few things. I mean, I fall off the Pokemon anime at the end of most series. It's not uncommon. All the way back at the end of Black and White, I didn't even really get into X and Y, despite the fact that it later became my favorite series for a while. At the end of XY, I didn't really watch much of Sun and Moon until the League, where I binged the entire series, and it took me a few months to get caught up on Pokemon Journeys. The one difference here is that I eventually did get caught up with each series and start watching weekly. That hasn't happened with Pokemon Horizons yet, and I can think of several reasons, but it all leads back to one key problem. And it's not even the series' fault. I miss Ash Ketchum. I know, it sounds kind of stupid, right? I mean, his journey went on for like a million years. Well, nearly 25 to be exact, but that's besides the point. Shouldn't I be ready to move on from him and give these fresh new faces a chance? I always thought I was a character-driven person when I watch series, and don't get me wrong, the Rising Volt Tacklers in Horizons are amazing. Liko is a wonderful and refreshing character to have as a protagonist. Roy kind of has that same Ash flair to him, and it's great seeing that. Dot is probably my favorite of the main three up to where I've watched in the series because she feels like the one with the most depth, and Quaxley is my favorite Paldea starter. And Freed is a standout character. I mean, I watched the origin episode of how he met Captain Pikachu, and what can I say? I was absolutely amazed by the stylistic approach they took in this episode. I don't know that we've got a flashback episode like this in the entire series. It was just so beautifully written and executed and flowed perfectly within the context of the show. That's one thing I love, is the flow of this series, which I actually heard they strayed away from later on, but I love that this series kind of carries on in between episodes. Each one directly ties into the next, which is so cool. But I don't think it's just Ash Ketchum who I miss. I miss what he brought to the series that I just don't feel with Horizons. There was always a sense of excitement and adventure. As a battling protagonist, we always had upcoming battles to look forward to. The formulaicness of Pokemon went away after XY, in my opinion. It wasn't just Ash's next gym battle that we were looking forward to. It could have been a trial battle in Sun and Moon, or in the case of Journeys, we were always waiting for his next PWC battle, which obviously had a different level of excitement because the people he battled could have been anyone from a random jabroni to a regional champion like Iris, an old foe like Volkner, or a new rival like B. Obviously, people have their opinions on Journeys, but that series was nothing if not for its hype moments. But not only that, it did have some stuff that worked, and I wish they kind of tried something like it or continued it into the future. Horizons actually has its own fair share of hype moments, like the episode where they find the Galarian Moltres, and not only is it extremely hype, but it's downright terrifying, which is an emotion I never really felt in the Ash anime. They do good work to re-establish the strength and scale of legendary Pokemon that was somewhat destroyed by a certain character in the previous series. There's also another thing. We haven't really seen anything in Horizons that would show us that it's the same universe as the one Ash Ketchum was in. We've seen cities Ash has been to, like Motostoke, but none of the characters that Ash interacted with as far as I know. I think another thing I loved about the Ash anime was the world, the universe. No matter what, I always had some random detail to rely on that were good world building moments, or maybe not world building, but world connecting. Like Professor Oak saying Staraptor and Swellow would be excited to have another flying Pokemon around when Ash sent Unfezant back, or the many references to Tracy between AG and Journeys when he finally returned. And since none of these characters have anything to do with Ash, we lose that aspect. I fell in love with Ash Ketchum's world, his friends, his journey, his point of view. This series has a great amount of world building in its own right. Actually, world building is one thing, but history building, I guess. I'm not an expert on literary terms, but I mean, Lucius, an ancient adventurer with these cool Pokemon, establishes the past world a bit. Then we have moments like Freed's backstory with Cap that I mentioned, Liko's grandmother's ancient castle, etc. I mean, I really love the story with Lapras being Lucius's Pokemon, but then breaking off and starting a Pokemon pirate crew, like, that stuff is kinda crazy in depth, not gonna lie. So as I established, I'm in no way arguing that Pokemon Horizons is lacking in quality. This is one of the more complete Pokemon series we've seen. I don't know that the ratings reflect that. Seriously, I don't know what the TV ratings for this have been compared to the previous series, but the writing is great. I love their stylistic choices, like how they transition to widescreen during flashbacks. The soundtrack is perfect if you're watching in Japanese, which I understand if you don't. And along with that, they picked a perfect art style. Like, I can't really tell if it draws from one of the previous series. It's like a combination of XY's super sharp animation with a little touch of Black and White and maybe some of the coloration of Sun and Moon and Journeys. I don't know, let's just call it its own thing at this point. But all of this isn't enough enough, you know, at least for me. I loved watching the anime to see Ash catch and bond with new Pokemon, raise a team, and bring out their full potential. Our three main protagonists have 2 Pokemon each, and we're nearing the end of the series. Sure, maybe their development is interesting and cool. I haven't seen a lot of the series, but I don't know, man. It's just not what I want from the Pokemon anime. For the 100th time, I miss Ash Ketchum, alright? I watch the anime every week to see his progression, and even in Journeys, I still enjoyed seeing the character I grew up with, despite the fact that the series as a whole didn't really come together like Sun and Moon or Diamond and Pearl did in the end. I watch the anime every week to see his influence on the friends around him, and the bonds that he forged with them throughout their journey that really transcended the series that they were confined to. I watch the anime every week to see him train his Pokemon and achieve greater heights than he ever had before. Sure, there were a lot of losses before he finally won, but isn't that kind of poetically admirable in a way? Never give up until it's over. That's a quote by Ash Ketchum, and sure, it sounds kind of corny, but have you ever seen a character in anime history fail for years and years on end, yet continue to pull themselves back up and start from scratch? I miss that, man. I miss watching the anime every week and being inspired by a kid's show. Isn't that something? Even as an adult, I carry this silly little series by my side. I miss Ash Ketchum.